The Watson household had once been a place of love and laughter, but over the years, cracks had formed, widening with every passing day. Claire Watson, a kind-hearted and resilient woman, had spent her marriage trying to be the glue that held her family together. She loved her husband, James, despite his flaws and frustrations, and adored their 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who was the light of her life. But James's resentment had turned their home into a battleground. James had once been an ambitious man with dreams of climbing the corporate ladder. However, years of setbacks in his career had chipped away at his confidence, leaving him bitter and angry. He blamed Claire for their modest lifestyle, accusing her of not doing enough to support his dreams, even though she worked tirelessly as a part-time secretary while caring for their daughter. "If you hadn't gotten pregnant, maybe I'd be somewhere by now," he sneered during one argument, the words cutting Claire to the core. For Emma, the arguments were a constant source of anxiety. She would often sit at the top of the stairs, clutching her favorite stuffed animal as she listened to her parents' voices rise and fall. She didn't understand why her father was so angry or why her mother's voice sounded so tired. All she knew was that their home didn't feel like the safe haven it once was. One night, after a particularly heated argument, James made a decision that would shatter their family. The fight had started like so many others, with James complaining about his job and their finances. "You're useless, Claire," he spat, slamming his hand on the kitchen table. "I'm sick of living like this. I'm doing everything I can," Claire replied, her voice trembling. "I'm working 2 jobs, James. I'm trying to keep this family afloat." James scoffed, his expression hard. "Your trying isn't enough. I'm done with this. I'm done with you." Claire froze, her heart pounding in her chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want you out of this house," James said coldly. "You and Emma. Get out tonight. I'm done." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Claire's mind raced as she tried to process what he was saying. "You can't be serious," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is our home. Emma's home." James's gaze was unyielding. "I don't care. I need to focus on my life, and I can't do that with you two dragging me down." In the doorway, Emma stood silently, clutching her stuffed animal tightly. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood enough. Her father wanted them gone. Her lip quivered as she looked at her mother, tears streaming down her small face. Claire's heart broke as she saw her daughter's fear and confusion. She knelt down, pulling Emma into her arms. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," she murmured, trying to sound reassuring even as her own world crumbled. "We'll be okay." That night, Claire packed their belongings into 2 small suitcases. She took only what they needed: clothes, toiletries, and Emma's favorite books and toys. She left behind the life she had built with James, knowing that staying would only bring more pain. As they stepped out into the chilly night, Claire looked back at the house one last time. It was no longer their home, it was just a house. With nowhere else to go, Claire sought refuge at a local women's shelter. The small, shared room they were given was a far cry from the cozy home Emma had known, but it was a safe space. Claire worked hard to create a sense of normalcy for her daughter, decorating their corner of the room with Emma's drawings and reading her bedtime stories every night. Emma, though young, sensed her mother's struggle and tried to be strong. "It's okay, Mommy," she said one night as they lay on the twin bed they shared. "As long as we're together, we'll be okay." Claire hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You're so brave, my sweet girl," she whispered. "I promise I'll take care of you." Despite the challenges they faced, Claire refused to let their circumstances define their future. She took on multiple jobs, working as a receptionist during the day and cleaning offices at night. She often came home exhausted, her hands calloused and her feet sore. But she always greeted Emma with a smile. "How was school today?" she would ask, eager to hear about her daughter's day. Emma thrived in school, channeling her energy into her studies. She excelled in math and science, often surprising her teachers with her curiosity and determination. She carried a quiet resolve within her, a fire ignited by the hardships she and her mother endured. "One day, I'm going to take care of you, Mommy," she would say. "You'll never have to work so hard again." Claire would smile and stroke her daughter's hair. "You're going to do amazing things, Emma. I just know it." Meanwhile, James's life didn't turn out as he had expected. Without Claire's support, his career stagnated further, and he found himself stuck in the same mediocre job he had always resented. The house, once filled with the warmth of family, felt cold and empty. Yet, his pride kept him from admitting that he had made a mistake. Claire, on the other hand, found strength she didn't know she had. She became a role model for Emma, showing her the importance of resilience, hard work, and kindness. Though their life was far from easy, they faced each challenge together, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. Emma never forgot the night her father had pushed them out, nor did she let it define her. Instead, she used it as fuel to drive her ambition. "We're going to be okay," she reminded herself every time she felt discouraged, and deep down, she knew she was destined for something greater. The years that followed were marked by struggle, perseverance, and transformation for Claire and Emma. Life as a single mother was no easy feat for Claire, but she faced every obstacle with unyielding determination. Working long hours to make ends meet, she often sacrificed her own needs to ensure Emma had everything she required to thrive. Despite the exhaustion etched into her features, Claire's love for her daughter never wavered. Emma, now a teenager, had taken her mother's resilience to heart. She excelled in school, driven by the promise she had made to herself as a child to build a better life for both of them. While her classmates worried about the latest trends or weekend plans, Emma focused on her studies and her dream of creating something that could change the world. She discovered a passion for technology in middle school when a teacher introduced her to coding. The logic and creativity it required fascinated her, and she spent hours tinkering with online tutorials and building small projects on a borrowed laptop. "You're amazing, sweetheart," Claire would say, watching Emma's fingers fly across the keyboard. "I'm so proud of you." By the time Emma reached high school, her potential was undeniable. She participated in coding competitions, often beating students years older than her, and won scholarships to attend advanced STEM programs. Her talent caught the attention of mentors and industry professionals, many of whom were amazed by her drive and ingenuity. One such mentor, Dr. Alan Grant, renowned tech entrepreneur, took Emma under his wing after meeting her at a regional tech fair. "You've got a rare gift," he told her. "With the right guidance, you could go far." Dr. Grant introduced Emma to opportunities that broadened her horizons. Through internships and networking events, she gained invaluable experience and began envisioning a future where she could create her own tech company. "I want to build something that helps people," Emma confided to her mother one evening. "Something that makes a real difference." Claire smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You will, Emma. I believe in you." After graduating as valedictorian of her high school, Emma earned a full scholarship to one of the nation's top universities, where she majored in computer science. Her time there was transformative. Surrounded by brilliant minds, she thrived, pushing the boundaries of her knowledge and creativity. She spent countless nights in the lab, developing innovative software and pitching her ideas at startup competitions. During her junior year, Emma created a groundbreaking app that used artificial intelligence to help small businesses streamline their operations. The app quickly gained traction, attracting investors who saw its potential. By the time she graduated, Emma had turned her college project into a fledgling company, Visionary Solutions. Building her business was a whirlwind of hard work and challenges, but Emma faced them with the same determination that had carried her through her childhood. She poured her energy into developing her product, hiring a talented team, and securing funding from venture capitalists. Claire, who had always been her biggest cheerleader, watched in awe as Emma's dreams became reality. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mom," Emma said one evening as they sat in her small office, surrounded by whiteboards filled with ideas. "You taught me how to be strong." Claire shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "You were always strong, Emma. I just helped you see it." Within a few years, Visionary Solutions became one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Emma's innovative software revolutionized the way businesses operated, earning her recognition as a rising star in the industry. She graced the covers of business magazines, her story serving as a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever faced adversity. Despite her success, Emma remained humble and deeply connected to her roots. She frequently donated to organizations that supported single mothers and underprivileged children, ensuring that others had the opportunities she and Claire had fought so hard to find. Emma's journey came full circle when she purchased a struggling company that specialized in logistics, a move that allowed her to expand Visionary Solutions' reach. As she reviewed the company's operations, she discovered a familiar name on the employee roster, James Watson. For a moment, Emma froze, her past rushing back to her in vivid detail. Her father, the man who had abandoned her and her mother, now worked for her company. The revelation left her conflicted. Part of her wanted to confront him, to demand answers for the years of pain and struggle he had caused. But another part of her, the part shaped by Claire's unwavering kindness, saw an opportunity to rise above the past. Emma decided to keep her identity a secret, at least for now. She wanted to see James for who he truly was, without the influence of her name or status. "I don't owe him anything," she told Claire when she shared the news. "But maybe this is a chance to show him the kind of person I've become." Claire nodded, her expression filled with both pride and concern. "Whatever you decide, Emma, just remember, you're stronger than he ever gave you credit for." Emma sat in her corner office, staring out at the city skyline as the revelation of her father's employment sank in. James Watson, the man who had turned his back on her and her mother, was now a mid-level manager in one of her company's acquisitions. The irony wasn't lost on her. He, who had deemed them unworthy of his support, was now indirectly working for the daughter he had abandoned. Her first instinct was to confront him immediately, to remind him of the pain he had caused and demand an explanation. But Emma wasn't the impulsive child he had left behind. She was a measured, strategic leader. If she was going to face him, she needed to approach it carefully. Emma called her mother that evening, sharing her plan. "I want to see him for who he is now, Mom," she said, "before I decide how to handle this." Claire's voice was steady but tinged with concern. "Just promise me you won't let him drag you back to that place, Emma. You've built a life that's about moving forward, not looking back." "I promise," Emma said, her resolve firm. "This isn't about revenge. It's about closure." The next week, Emma arranged for an anonymous site visit to the logistics division where James worked. She arrived in casual attire, blending in with the employees as she toured the facility. When she finally spotted him, her breath caught in her throat. James looked older, his hair graying at the temples and his posture slightly hunched. He wore the weary expression of someone who had seen his dreams fall short. Watching him interact with his colleagues, Emma noticed a faint air of deference in his demeanor, so different from the arrogant man she remembered. As the day went on, Emma learned more about his role and reputation. James was known as a competent but unremarkable manager. He wasn't particularly well-liked or disliked, simply another cog in the machine. The realization left Emma with mixed emotions. On one hand, she felt vindicated that he hadn't found the success he had claimed she and Claire had held him back from. On the other, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of pity for the man he had become. A week later, Emma summoned James to a meeting at the corporate office. She didn't include her name on the invitation, ensuring he wouldn't know who he was meeting. When James entered the conference room and saw Emma sitting at the head of the table, his face went pale. "Emma," he stammered, his voice a mix of shock and confusion. "What are you doing here?" Emma's expression was calm, her gaze steady. "Hello, James," she said, deliberately omitting the word Dad. "Please have a seat." James hesitated before lowering himself into the chair across from her. I didn't know you worked here." Emma leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. "I don't work here, James. I own this company." His jaw dropped, his eyes widening as he processed her words. "You own it?" "Yes," Emma said firmly. "Visionary Solutions acquired this division last year. So, in a way, you work for me." The room fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. James's eyes flickered with emotions, shock, disbelief, and something that resembled shame. For a moment, Emma let him sit with his thoughts before continuing. "You threw us out, James," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "You left Mom and me to fend for ourselves because you thought we were holding you back. Do you even realize what that did to us?" James's face flushed, and he looked down at the table. "Emma, I didn't know what I was doing. I was angry, frustrated. I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" Emma repeated, her tone incredulous. "You didn't just make a mistake. You abandoned us. You broke your family." "I know," James said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've regretted it every day since. But by the time I realized how wrong I was, it felt like it was too late. I thought you and Claire would never want to see me again." Emma's chest tightened as she listened to his words. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part remembered the years of struggle, the nights she had cried herself to sleep wondering why her father didn't love her enough to stay. "I'm not here for apologies, James," Emma said finally, "and I don't need your regret. What I need is to understand why. Why were we so easy to walk away from?" James looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't easy, Emma. I was selfish and stupid. I thought I needed to get away to fix my life, but all I did was ruin yours. And I'll never forgive myself for that." Emma felt a lump rise at her throat, but she swallowed it down. "You're right, you did ruin our lives, but Mom and I rebuilt them. She worked herself to the bone to give me a future, and I worked hard to make sure she never had to struggle again." James nodded, his voice breaking. "You've become an incredible woman, Emma. I don't deserve to be proud, but I am." Emma leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. "I'm not sure what I want from you, James. I didn't bring you here to punish you, but I also don't know if I can forgive you." James nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'll take whatever you're willing to give, Emma, even if it's just this moment." For the first time, Emma saw him not as the larger-than-life figure who had abandoned her, but as a broken man who had made terrible choices. She didn't know if she could forgive him, but she did know one thing. She had risen above his failures and built a life of her own. The meeting between Emma and James marked a pivotal moment in their fractured relationship. While Emma had always envisioned this confrontation as an opportunity to hold him accountable for the pain he had caused, sitting across from him and seeing his remorse gave her pause. It was clear that James was no longer the man who had turned his back on her and Claire. Life had humbled him in ways she hadn't anticipated. In the days following their meeting, Emma couldn't shake the conversation from her mind. She replayed his words over and over, wondering whether his regret was genuine or simply the product of his current circumstances. Seeking clarity, she turned to the one person whose perspective mattered most, her mother. Claire was in her cozy apartment, sipping tea when Emma arrived. Her daughter's expression betrayed her inner turmoil, and Claire immediately knew what was on her mind. "You met with him, didn't you?" she asked, setting her cup down. Emma nodded, sinking into the chair across from her. "I did. He said he's sorry, Mom. He admitted he made mistakes, but I don't know if I can believe him. Or if I should." Claire leaned forward, placing a comforting hand on Emma's. "You don't have to decide right away, Emma. Forgiveness isn't something you give for someone else. It's something you give for yourself. If holding on to the pain is weighing you down, then maybe it's time to let it go. But that's your choice, and no one else can make it for you." Emma's eyes welled up as she listened to her mother's words. "How are you so strong, Mom? After everything he did to us, you're still so kind." Claire smiled softly. "Because I learned a long time ago that holding on to anger only hurts the person carrying it. I let go of my anger for him, so I could focus on loving you and building our life. But that doesn't mean I forgot what he did." Taking her mother's advice to heart, Emma decided to meet with James again. This time, she invited him to a quiet cafe near the office, hoping to create a more informal setting. When he arrived, he looked nervous, his hands fidgeting as he sat across from her. "Thank you for meeting me again," James said, his voice hesitant. Emma nodded, her expression calm. "I needed to think about what you said last time. I needed to decide how I feel." James leaned forward, his eyes earnest. "And I'm not sure I can forgive you completely. Emma said, her tone measured. "But I can try. Not for you, but for me." James's shoulders sagged with relief, tears glistening in his eyes. "Thank you, Emma. That means more than you know." Emma took the opportunity to set boundaries. "This doesn't mean we're suddenly going to have a perfect relationship," she said firmly. "Trust takes time to rebuild. And honestly, I'm not sure what kind of relationship I want with you yet." James nodded, accepting her words. "I understand. I'll take whatever time you need." Their conversation continued, touching on lighter topics, her work, his role in the company, and memories of her childhood before things had fallen apart. It wasn't easy for Emma to talk about the past, but she found a strange sense of closure in hearing James acknowledge his failures and express genuine pride in her accomplishments. Over the next few months, Emma and James worked to rebuild a tentative connection. Emma kept their interactions professional at work, but occasionally met with him outside the office to talk. Each meeting brought new insights into the man he had become, a man humbled by his mistakes and grateful for the chance to make amends. One evening, James surprised Emma by bringing a gift, a framed photo of her as a child with Claire, taken on a sunny day at the park. "I found this while going through some old things," he said. "It reminded me of the good times, before I let everything fall apart." Emma stared at the photo, her heart aching with a mix of nostalgia and sadness. "Thank you," she said softly. "This means a lot." As Emma navigated her relationship with James, she also reflected on her own growth. She realized that while her success had been fueled by the pain of his abandonment, it was her mother's unwavering love and support that had truly shaped her. Claire had given her the strength to rise above adversity, and Emma vowed to honor that by living a life of purpose and integrity. To that end, she began incorporating initiatives at Visionary Solutions to support single-parent families and women re-entering the workforce. She also launched a scholarship program in her mother's name, ensuring that other children like her would have the resources to pursue their dreams. Claire, upon learning about the scholarship, was overwhelmed with emotion. "You didn't have to do this, Emma," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I did," Emma replied, hugging her tightly, "because everything I've achieved is because of you." By the end of the year, Emma had found a sense of peace she hadn't known before. Her relationship with James was far from perfect, but it was no longer defined by anger and resentment. She had given him a chance to show he had changed, and while the wounds of the past couldn't be erased, they no longer held her captive. At a company event, James approached Emma cautiously, a hint of nervousness in his demeanor. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, "for giving me this chance. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." Emma met his gaze, her expression thoughtful. "You've got a long way to go, James, but I appreciate the effort." As he walked away, Emma felt a sense of closure she hadn't thought possible. She had confronted her past, found forgiveness on her own terms, and built a future that honored her mother's sacrifices and her own resilience. For Emma, that was more than enough. As Emma continued to navigate her life, she focused on honoring the journey that had brought her and Claire through their struggles to triumph. Her relationship with James remained a work in progress, but she found solace in knowing that she had faced her past with courage and integrity. Her success, however, was no longer just about personal achievement. It was about leaving a lasting legacy that reflected the strength and love her mother had instilled in her. Emma's company, Visionary Solutions, flourished as it expanded into new industries and adopted a reputation for both innovation and compassion. Emma ensured that the company's core values aligned with the principles that had guided her own life. Programs supporting single parents, scholarships for underprivileged students, and initiatives to empower women in technology became the hallmarks of her leadership. Claire, who had spent so many years sacrificing for Emma's future, now lived in comfort and peace. Emma had purchased a beautiful home for her mother, complete with a garden that Claire had always dreamed of having. It was a far cry from the cramped shelter room they had once shared, and every corner of the house was filled with warmth and memories they had built together. One sunny afternoon, Emma surprised Claire with a ribbon-cutting ceremony at the launch of the Claire Watson Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting single mothers and their children. The foundation offered resources such as childcare assistance, job training, and housing support, services that Claire had struggled to find during her hardest times. As Claire stood on the stage, holding the oversized scissors in her hands, her eyes filled with tears. "I never imagined something like this," she said softly, looking at Emma. "You've made all of this possible." Emma hugged her tightly, her voice filled with emotion. "You made it possible, Mom. You gave me everything when you had nothing. This is for you, and for every mother who's as strong as you are." The crowd erupted in applause as Claire cut the ribbon, officially opening the foundation. It was a moment of triumph not just for Claire and Emma, but for everyone who had faced the same struggles and needed hope. James attended the event, standing quietly in the back of the crowd. He watched as Emma and Claire embraced, their bond unbreakable. For the first time, he fully understood the magnitude of what he had missed out on, the love and resilience that had carried them through the hardships he had caused. After the ceremony, James approached Emma hesitantly. "That was beautiful," he said. "You've done something incredible here." "Thank you," Emma replied, her tone measured but not unkind. "Mom deserves all of it." James nodded, his gaze drifting toward Claire, who was chatting with attendees. "She's an amazing woman. I see that now. She always has been," Emma said firmly. "You just didn't take the time to notice." The conversation was brief, but it left James with a renewed sense of humility. He had lost something precious when he abandoned his family, but he was grateful for the chance to see the strength they had built in his absence. As the years went on, Emma's legacy continued to grow. She remained deeply involved in the work of her foundation, mentoring young women and sharing her story at events around the world. Her vulnerability and authenticity inspired countless others, and her name became synonymous with hope and resilience. Claire, now enjoying her retirement, often accompanied Emma to events, beaming with pride as she watched her daughter thrive. "I always knew you were destined for greatness," she would say, squeezing Emma's hand. "But it's even better than I imagined." Though Emma's relationship with James was never fully repaired, they reached a place of mutual understanding. James took early retirement and spent his time volunteering at the Claire Watson Foundation, quietly contributing to the mission his ex-wife and daughter had championed. It was his way of making amends, even if the wounds of the past couldn't be completely healed. One evening, as Emma visited the foundation's headquarters, she found James organizing supplies in the storage room. "You're here late," she said, her tone neutral but not unkind. James turned, a small smile on his face. "Just trying to help. It's the least I can do." Emma studied him for a moment, then said, "It's appreciated. People here notice the effort you're putting in." His smile faltered slightly, and he nodded. "I'm glad to be useful." Though their conversation was brief, it symbolized the quiet truce they had reached. They might never have the relationship Emma had once dreamed of as a child, but they had found a way to coexist in the present. Emma's success was not just measured by her wealth or accomplishments, but by the lives she touched. She had turned her pain into purpose, using her platform to uplift others and ensure that no one else had to endure the struggles she and Claire had faced. Her story became a beacon of hope for those who felt unseen and unheard, proving that strength and love could overcome even the deepest wounds. As she stood in her office one evening, looking out at the city lights, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had risen above adversity, built a legacy of compassion, and honored the woman who had given her everything. For Emma, her greatest achievement wasn't the company she had built or the accolades she had received. It was the knowledge that she had created a life filled with meaning, purpose, and love.